Hello once again. So thank you for joining in. So for all who have been staying in connection and following the videos, thank you for being there. And those who are new, I hope you will be liking all the videos and have certain insights into the discussions that are followed. Now today's discussion is Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queenie. So before we get into the discussion on Fairy Queenie, let's quickly see who was Edmund Spenser. Now, as we know of him being born in 1553, a very prominent writer of the 16th century, was born in England and died in 1599 in England as well. Now, certainly this English poet, Edmund Spenser, is known for his Fairy Queenie, which was a dedication to Elizabeth I and also certain other great Elizabethan figures. Now, as we know of Elizabeth I, who was she? She was the queen who ruled England from 1558 to 1603. She belonged to the Tudor dynasty and was the daughter of Henry VIII, someone whom we have been known in the Tudor period, and her father being Henry VIII and mother Anne Boleyn. Now, the first three books were dedicated to Elizabeth I, which was published in 1589. Now, if we talk about Elizabeth, she was highly pleased when she was given this book by Edmund Spenser in the year 1589. And, being so pleased and overwhelmed with the dedication and the work that is so magnificent and worthy, she immediately granted him a lifetime pension of £50 a year. Now, talking about Fairy Queenie, it has certain epic and allegorical features. It has altogether 6 books. But however, initially only the first 3 books were published, and it was in the year 1590. So in 1589 it was given, the first 3 books were given to Elizabeth I, and in the following year 1590 the first 3 books were published. Lastly, we see 4, 5, 6 were added, which was compiled and published in the year 1596. Now it has approximately altogether 36,000 lines that have been structured by 4,000 stanzas. Now here we get to learn about the Spenserian stanza form and style. So from the very word Spenserian stanza itself, we can understand that it is invented none other than by Edmund Spenser. Now, in Spenserian stanza, we see that, which is definitely followed in the Fairy Queenie, we see that each stanza contains 9 lines. So this is something very unique of Spenserian stanza. So it has 9 lines, where the first 8 lines are in iambic pentameter. Now, we all know about iambic pentameter, but if you still want, I can have a detailed video on the meter form, the metrics, and also the differentiation between iambic pentameters and others. So if you want, you can mail me or comment. Now, in Spenserian stanza, we see that there are total 9 lines, and of them only 8 lines are in, or the first 8 lines are in iambic pentameter. Now, the 9th line is an alexandrine, which is in iambic hexameter. Now, altogether, the rhyme scheme of Spenserian stanza is AB, AB, BC, BC, C. So it is AB, AB, BC, BC, and C. C is the alexandrine, which is in iambic hexameter. Now, in this poem, Spenser experimented on both diction and structure that had laid profound influence in the following literary periods. Now, talking about the intention of Edmund Spenser behind writing this beautiful poetry, we see that he provides insight into human experiences, conflict, follies, immorality, and consciousness. Also, we see that, before he had been writing this particular poem, we see that he was highly influenced by Virgil and Homer and certain Italian writers like Ariosto and Tasso. So their subjects and themes, along with what Edmund Spenser had intended, are well reflected in Fairy Queenie as well. Now, this particular long poem, The Fairy Queenie, is not only dedicated to Elizabeth I, as I had mentioned, or was also dedicated to other Elizabethan figures. Now, apart from the Queen of England, who is represented as Gloriana and Belphoebe, the other Elizabethan figures whom Edmund Spenser dedicates this particular work uh, are Earl of Oxford, Earl of Northumberland, Earl of Cumberland, Earl of Essex, Countess of Pembroke, Sir Walter Raleigh, and definitely some other names. Gradually, as we move on in a detailed study, we'll come across some other figures as well. Now, overall, we see that Edmund Spenser stresses on nobility, morality, and virtue. Now he hopes to build a correlation between every individual in the society and allow them to understand the necessity and the essentiality of nobility, truth, morality, and virtue. Now, all total, we know that there are 6 books, and each book has been attributed to a greater significance. Now, if we talk about what are these attributes and how are they aligned to each book, so we see book 1 focusing on holiness, book 2 on temperance, book 3 chastity, book 4 friendship, book 5 and 6 on justice and courtesy respectively. Now, as we know that all these books have certain attributes and significance, and they are intending to create a uniformity in society and allowing individual to live within certain specific attributes like virtue, truth, humanism, and morality. And throughout, like while we study, we come across important characters like Red Cross Knight, Una, Prince Arthur, Guion, Britomart, Campbell, Calidore, and so on. And on the other hand, we see certain characters who are against the virtues, morality, like the, or you can say the antagonists, like Archimago, Duessa, or Goglio, and so on. Now, through these great and virtuous characters, especially the knights, Edmund Spenser show a personal development through quest and struggles. So, in each book, we will find certain quests that are coming up. So, each of these knights are given certain responsibility and they are struggling through the quest. And amidst this, they are not only coming up with the celebration of the attributes, but also glimpses with a personal growth and development. So each quest is an allegory in Spenser's Fairy Queenie, and each knight, like the Red Cross Knight and so on, undergo potential growth through forces and virtue on which each book is set. So if we talk about book 1, for example, so in book 1, as a reader, we come across Red Cross Knight and Una, who is signifying truth. Now, Gloriana. Now, who is Gloriana? It is Elizabeth I who is being referred to as Gloriana. So, Gloriana has ordered Red Cross Knight to perform a task in book 1, and it was to kill a dragon who was a danger for all and who had imprisoned Una's parents. Now, in book 1, we have 12 cantos, so each having certain significance throughout the tale of killing of the dragon. Now, we see that this Red Cross Knight who has been given the responsibility of killing the dragon is not only meeting this dragon and is the only struggle here, but there are other monsters that are coming in his pathway. So we see that Red Cross Knight is the knight of holiness here, and gradually with the help of Una and King Arthur, he comes out to be a chivalrous person, and there is a potential personal growth and development altogether. Now, like Red Cross Knight who stands for holiness and represents book 1, we see Guion is the knight of temperance in book 2. Similarly, Britomart, who is a woman in disguise of a male knight, stands for chastity in book 3. Now we have Artegall in as the knight of justice, and Campbell and Triamond stands for friendship. And lastly, in book 6, whom do we find? We find Calidore as the knight of courtesy. So the battle is between the knights and the monsters and the other antagonists who represent the binaries like good, bad, good, evil, and then the underworld and the real world, dark and light, immorality and morality, and so on. So these binaries are constantly being read upon and hinged upon by Edmund Spenser. Now, we see that if we consider how far and how relevant Fairy Queenie is even in today's time, we see, for example, in book 1, altogether, if we read all the cantos, we find that there are certain attributes to each character. Like Una stands for truth, then Red Cross Knight for holiness. We have Duessa for duplicity. We have Sansfoy for faithlessness. We have Archimago for deceit. We have Abesa for absence. And then we also encounter 7 deadly sins. So we see that both the negative and the positive characters are gradually creating a very uh, important narrative in book 1. Now, the book 1 shows how holiness triumphs over falsehood. Now, there are certain elements, certain characters gradually coming up through the quest of Red Cross Knight, who stands for holiness, and how he will be able to achieve and triumph with the help of Una, who stands for truth, and leap of faith. And theologically, Una stands also for Protestant Christianity. So in book 1, we get to see Protestant Christianity versus Roman Catholicism and good versus evil. Now, this Red Cross Knight encounters certain danger and struggle as he meets the monstrous error. So, while we are coming and reading the Canto 1 and 2 of Book 1, we see that he is in grave danger as he meets the monstrous error and her cannibalistic offspring. Now he finds, gradually we see he beheads her, and he finds victory by fighting away the monstrous error. And then we see him meeting a deceiver who is named Duessa, who also stands for duplicity. Now, gradually, under Duessa's charm, he falls into self destructive tendency. Now, Duessa is the sorcerer who is able to separate Una, truth, and night, Red Cross Knight, holiness, through deception and lust. So basically, the Duessa, who is the sorcerer, is coming in between the truth and the holiness. And through her deception, through her beauty and lustful behavior, we see that Red Cross Knight is unable to identify the purpose to which he began. So, holiness here becomes susceptible to the opposite of truth, which is falsehood. So, now here we will see how holiness triumphs over falsehood, or how Red Cross Knight triumphs over the evil. Now, under Duessa's duplicity and lustful behavior and deception, we see that the Red Cross Knight is arriving in the house of pride, and he is separated from Una, and he is accompanied by Una. And in this house of pride, he finds Lucifera. Now, who is Lucifera? She is the female embodiment of Satan. So, gradually, we see that there is a very negative atmosphere, and certainly that is in opposition to good. Now, gradually, he meets another monstrous giant named Orgoglio. And being very feeble and weak, we see the Red Cross Knight is unable to fight back. And to his rescue, we see Una, and King Arthur is redeeming him by taking him back to the House of Holiness. And then again, we see another battle taking place over the monster of despair, which is eventually won by Red Cross Knight. Lastly, we see Red Cross Knight understands the mistakes he had made earlier, and how we gradually, as a reader, we see that he's regaining strength and defeats the dragon who had imprisoned Una's parents. Now, these are short examples from the book 1 for you to understand the idea behind Fairy Queenie. So, if we talk about the conclusion to book 1, we see that as soon as Red Cross Knight defeats the dragon and frees Una's parents from his imprisonment, these people are subjected to celebrate and have a renewal of life. So Red Cross Knight has another higher calling and is fulfilling duty of the Fairy Queenie and the Gloriana. Now there is a very similar sovereignty. There is a fall of evil, there is a balance between good and peace and joy. And certainly, we see the relevance of Fairy Queenie not only in the 16th century but also in the 21st century, because it not only plots these characters, the positive and the negative, in a way that it narrates through the human evolution, the idea behind living, the sole purpose of existence, and existing within the virtues, attributes that are often neglected. So, if you want a detailed analysis on book one or any of the books, please do comment below. And if you have liked it, please do share. That's very overwhelming and encouraging for me. Thank you and stay connected.